Hello. Today, I'd like to welcome Nathan Shields. Nathan Shields is proud owner of PT Owners Club podcast, private practice owner extraordinaire, very successful private practice in Phoenix, Arizona, then selling that for a very pretty penny, I might add, and then went out on his own, moved his family to Alaska, and amongst other things, took this podcast, the PT Owners Club, to a whole new level. I'm so happy to have an opportunity to have Nathan on our podcast today. Welcome, Nathan Shields. Hello.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Shaun. I really appreciate it, man. It's cool to be on your podcast, knowing that you were one of my first podcast interviewees. 4 years ago, I think, was one of my first podcasts.
Yeah, well, it took me a little while to kind of grow into doing something like this, and it's somewhat new for me. And actually, all my podcasts have pretty much been Shaun rambling. And so you're my first podcast with an actual other person. So
okay, so yeah, all right. This is the first rodeo for you.
Yeah, my first interview on the podcast.
Okay, I went the totally opposite direction. I didn't think I really knew all that much, so I'd rather interview people who had all the information, like you, and highlight you guys. And so I didn't really think there was much value I could add. So I go the other way and just interview a bunch of other people.
You know, that's not true, but I get what you're saying. Yeah, sometimes it's easier to kind of work off of someone than to all alone, just between me and this little microphone, right? Yeah. But so Nathan, tell us your story. I mean, you're usually getting other people's story. Tell me your story, like how long were you out of school before you went into private practice?
Well, let's go all the way back, Shaun, really. Okay. It was a cold, windy day in November of 1970 when my mother went to the hospital.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. I always went into physical therapy knowing that I wanted to own a clinic, right? So when I met physical therapists who I aspired to be like back in the day when I was in college, they were people who had relatively not rich lives, but comfortable lives that could provide for their family.
Right.
And then I volunteered at some of these physical therapy facilities and watched what was happening, talked to the patients, talked to the providers, and would come home just like with an adrenaline rush. It was just kind of tingly and everything was rosy and exciting and the world was great. And that kind of told me, this is my thing. This is what I want to do. So, of course, pursued physical therapy, knowing eventually I would get into physical therapy ownership at some time. And so graduating, did my rounds of physical therapy jobs and positioned on physical therapy practices at a hospital-owned outpatient facility, did some work in sniffs and that kind of stuff here and there, but eventually got the courage in the form of my wife, got the courage to open up my own practice. It kind of went the opposite way. I was essentially kind of looking for a space, and after work, I would go drive areas where maybe I wanted to post a practice, and I would look for places for rent, and then I'd tell my wife about it. Hey, I think this place might work, and she'd call, and eventually she'd call one place, and the rates and the terms were great, and she said, "Okay, when are you going to put in your notice?" I was like, what? This is really happening? And so I had to put in my notice and actually believe that I was going to own a PT clinic that was dependent upon me. That was a long time. That was 2002.
Right.
And that I did that and started from scratch. My kid asked me the other day, or someone else asked me maybe, like, how many employees did you have when you first started your clinic? None. It was me. I was doing it all, right? You know that.
Yeah.
I did everything from mop the toilets and to marketing the physical therapy. So I did it all. And eventually within a few months had my first employee, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, in the Metro Phoenix area, had the one clinic, eventually started a second clinic. The manager for that second clinic ended up wanting to buy that clinic over the course of a few years, and that became my partner, Will Humphreys, who would be a great guest to have on your podcast as well.
I'll get him.
Yeah, right. And so he and I then also had a third clinic, and eventually the clinic that he bought from me, we decided to just merge all these clinics together and got a fourth clinic. And and ran that for a number of years. And I'm really truncating things. This happened over the course of at least a decade or so.
Right.
Before, and we eventually sold 4 years ago. So 2018 we sold, and I would say Will and I are really excited that we didn't own anything through the pandemic. So in that case, it was good timing to get out.
And now people are crying on the podcast. So
all right.
that. Yeah.
Right. And things are back. I mean, if you were to sell now, we probably would have made more if we just muddled through that, but no complaints whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And since that time, have been doing the podcast for the past 4 years. I do some coaching like you for PT owners. And then I'm also find myself doing other things, whether it's real estate and other things to keep me busy.
Yeah, good. And so if you're looking back, like in your whole private practice career, the trials and tribulations and everything that goes with it, and you're going to give one piece of advice, like that you think, I mean, certainly there's so many things, right? But the one thing that you thought was a catalyst that really got you and you, maybe even you and Will, into like leadership and from that particular perspective, right? Versus cleaning the toilets and stuff like that, right?
Yeah. Well, it had to be a mindset shift and an understanding that I need to know more than I currently do. I don't get me wrong. Over the course of those first 10 plus years, I had built a good business.
Yeah, sure did.
That was financially stable. Mm-hmm. I was making decent money. I had a large family that I could support. I live in the American dream, essentially. Right. Outside of the fact that, I was waking up at 4 a.m. to get caught up on my notes so I could be at the office at 6:30 or 7 to start treating patients, and then get home at 7 p.m. at night and do that 5 days a week and have calls every day while I'm on vacation from the office.
Right.
So limited freedom. I honestly, Shaun, I would go 3 days without seeing my newborn baby awake.
Ooh, ouch. Because
I was up while they were asleep, and by the time I got home, they were asleep. And so all I would do is see them in the crib. And I recognized, so people on the outside looking in, and I remember some of the looks that my employees gave me when I said, I'm going to get some consulting coaching so I can improve this business and take it to another level. They looked at me like, really, like, what's wrong with your business? You're making good money and things seem to be going well here. They didn't understand what was really happening in my life, that the freedom factor was little to none.
Yeah, the quality of that life, the quantity financially might be okay, but the quality wasn't where it had to be because it was so consuming, I guess.
Yeah. And I finally had to recognize that the limiting factor was, it was a number of things, and they didn't come with these exact phrases, but recognizing that I was the limiting factor, that I needed to know more than I knew, that I needed to gain some more knowledge, and that it would require an investment in time and money in order to do that. It wasn't just going to come from a book and the natural osmosis of those theories would be automatically implemented in my practice. I needed some guidance from someone who'd been there, done that before, right?
Right.
And so, all of those things to say, I needed consulting, I needed a coach, I needed somebody, an expert to show me what to do next. Honestly, it was after Will and I finally committed to that we saw dramatic, significant changes in our business.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, I think, sometimes it's like when you're struggling in a business, it's like you're willing to sacrifice your freedom and time to make some money because you got to. It's like you tell your wife, buckle in for a long ride, and maybe someday I'll have dinner with you on a Saturday, right? But, as eventually when the practice gets to a certain point, it's like, even though it can be financially successful, it can get to a point where you become the hamster in the wheel for so long. It's just normal to be the hamster in the wheel. And at that point, it's sometimes where you have to sacrifice some money to get some freedom and time. And that would be in that case with you and with Will, with getting some help, getting some coaching or some advice. from someone who's just not right in it, right? So I'm sure now you have transitioned into also coaching clients and helping them go to a higher level and grow their business. What do you find now that you're on the other side of that? What do you see in some of the early clients when you initially meet with them that you would sometimes see in yourself?
Maybe it's a natural thing. I see it from myself because I'm a frugal person by nature. Mm-hmm. But I see it pervasive throughout the physical therapy industry is the scarcity mindset, right? Some people might not like the scarcity versus abundance mindset because it's been overplayed, but I see it often with my clients, and there's little room for accepting that there's greater possibilities, and that if they were to invest a little bit more time or money in more important things, that they don't see those as investments. They see those investments as lost expenses. Like, that's $5,000 I'm never going to see again, instead of thinking that this is an investment in my business, that if I put $5,000 here, it could return $20, $50, or $100,000 later on, years down the road, right?
Yeah. Do you mean like investing in coaching, or investing in a particular service or a way of doing things?
Anything. Yeah. Investing in hiring a new PT.
Well, yeah, right? There you go.
Yeah. Taking on that salary. They see that as a lost expense that would never return. And I can't tell you how many times I've been trying to tell. Well, nowadays it's a little bit difficult because it's just simply harder to recruit PTs, right? But when it wasn't hard to recruit PTs, soon after the pandemic hit, it was still hard for them to reach out and find a PT, because I was trying to tell them, listen, yeah, you're going to pay them the $75,000 salary. They're going to return 3 to 4 times that should you keep them productive.
Right.
And they're like, well, then where does my salary come from? Well, let's work out the numbers. And you could work out the numbers all day long and get them to a point where it works on paper, and they still couldn't take that step. Same thing. And you might find that as well, as you're trying to talk someone, I hate to say it this way, you're trying to talk someone into getting coaching because you know what's best for them.
Yeah.
And what we charge, honestly, I've had people tell me that I'm asking for their firstborn child.
Yes.
With what I'm charging for coaching. I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars of coaching over the course of my lifetime on many different coaches. So, and I would never change a thing about it. So it's hard for me to understand it now, but talking to myself back then, I can understand where my mindset would have been and where these potential clients are, that they don't see it as an investment. They don't. And it's hard to extrapolate. Say you spend $10,000 on me right now over the course of the next 6 months, 12 months, whatever. You are going to, number one, get more profitable faster. You're going to accelerate this growth, and you're going to be more profitable than you would be 2 to 3 years from now, in terms of 5 to 6 figures. And they can't make that connection. It's just, I don't know what it is. Of course, there's fear, there's scarcity. My profit margins are 5% right now. How can I possibly spend money on you? And so it's hard to get over that.
Mm-hmm. It is hard. And I think there's something to, like, there's a certain neurosis that occurs in running a healthcare business. It's, get the patients in, get them treated, do your notes, that goes on. And where what coaching does is create a better future. And so sometimes what's happening, the person is just so caught up in the hamster in the wheel, and like, how could I possibly have the time to do this type of stuff, right? And so you're getting them to shift their mindset and how they do a few things, so that they can, like, poke their head up and realize that life doesn't suck, and that maybe there's a chance that they could do better, and achieve something greater than what they've done thus far. And I've got a client I'm working with right now. He works his tail off. He's about 300 visit practice or so. He works his tail off, and it's like he's in a trap. He's making money. He's doing good, but his mindset is, you go to work, you grind it out. You go to work, you grind it out. Where it's like, well, who's going to steer the ship, right? And so it's kind of like, the captain of the ship who likes to make meals for his guests in the galley. while the ship runs ashore, someone's got to steer it. So, maybe they don't know how to steer it. They've just been fortunate not to hit the rocks so far, right?
Right.
But with coaching and with your help, it's like you're guiding the person on a path that usually gets them to their destination with better fuel economy, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I totally get the mindset, and it's so hard to convey that to someone else because they've spent how many decades building their life to become a physical therapist.
Right.
And now you're telling them, if you want to achieve your goals, you have to lose that identity altogether.
Right.
And that throws them for a loop. Number one, what am I going to do with my time is a question that they don't ask, but they ask in other ways.
That's right.
How can I justify my existence if I'm not treating patients? They are existential questions that they have about their lives. It takes time for them to make that mindset shift. And I can start seeing it when they come to me, and maybe you have the same, maybe it's a win for you like it is for me, Shaun.
Yeah.
When they finally tell me, I recognized that I was wasting my time treating patients because the entire time I was thinking about the business and what I needed to get done. When they finally get to that point of recognizing that treating patients is less valuable in the overall scenario than working on their business, when they get to that point, then I'm like, finally, okay, now we're making a breakthrough and there's a win, right? Because it's true. You are doing your patients a disservice if you are treating them when your business needs you. You can do, and that's hard to understand sometimes because you can do so much more. You can have so much more impact. You can be more powerful across a greater number of people if you were to focus more of your time on the business than on the one-on-one relationships of patient care. And so I understand where they're starting from. I just wish I could get more of them to the other side faster because they don't recognize, and you guys taught me this back in the day, is that once you open your door for your clinic, you are no longer a physical therapist first. Now you're a business owner who just happens to be a physical therapist.
That's right.
So even changing the wording, I recommend some of my clients at times when we get into this conversations, they change the wording as they talk to people. When people say, what do you do? Instead of saying physical therapist, I'd challenge you to say, I'm a business owner.
That's right.
And stop.
That's right.
And they say, oh, what kind of business? I own a physical therapy clinic.
That's right.
Yeah. And I challenge them to use those words because that's the mentality they need to get into is I'm a business owner first. It just happens to be in physical therapy.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's a lot, Nathan, where, as a clinician, you don't really even have time management. I mean, you have a schedule that someone keeps for you and you see the next person on the list, right?
Yeah.
And then
you're a slave to the schedule. You're kind of a slave to the front office person who's dictating your schedule, right?
Right. And then, then you have the documentation that sometimes falls on your own schedule. And some people don't have the discipline for that. They can't get their notes done. Right. And so, when you start rolling out of, patient care and you get your quote admin time, you usually do your notes during your admin time instead of like driving business, right?
Pay bills, handle HR stuff, whatever's coming at you. It's not intentional, right?
That's right. That's right. And so, I think when everything's going on at once, I say we're just kind of neurotic. Everything's capturing your attention right now. But sanity is that ability to be able to put something into the future and have it materialize at some point. And that takes planning and that takes execution, right? And whereas if all we do is firefight in a clinic, which so many practice owners do, we just put out a fire, put your head down, treat your patients. You usually are managing your practice on the way to the bathroom when you have to pee, so, that's not much of a future you're creating. And so really I agree with you. It's like getting that person to recognize that the time he spends not treating and using that time effectively will give him the practice of his dreams.
And they can't envision that initially. I don't think. The question often comes up, well, what am I going to do during that time?
Yeah.
Right. And that's where that's where coaching comes into play.
That's where coaching comes in.
Okay. Well, what statistics are you measuring? Oh,
yeah.
Okay, well, let's start there.
Yeah, that's a good place to start.
Right.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff. And some of the stuff, can be exciting for people. I know it was for me, like working on the business eventually started becoming exciting.
Yeah, me too.
I haven't met anyone though, or it's been a very rare instance that when you tell them what they should be doing during that admin time, and one of those things is to start developing policy and procedure or systems, right?
Right.
I haven't met anyone that really enjoys doing that and looks forward to doing that. You can give them all these other things to do. They will avoid trying to write up policy and procedure.
Oh, wow. So, I have a client now that just yesterday said that like every year they redo their policy and procedure manual, and because it's just because guys aren't really doing it right and all that. And I said, why don't you just make them read it again and then ask them questions about it, right? Because sometimes we write these things and then they sit on a shelf and no one ever follows them, right?
That's right.
It's like instead of rewriting your policy and procedure manual, why don't you have people read it and then go around and ask them a question or two from the policy and procedure manual to see if they understand it. And if they don't understand it, ask them to read it again, right?
And change it.
Change it. If they don't understand it or that's no longer applies, then change it then, kind of.
Right. Yeah.
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 Good. And then now in terms of like, how do you handle those considerations when you have someone who thinks he's more valuable treating patients and because he's generating revenue? Whereas if he's not generating revenue.
Well, it's hard. Maybe I can't help them. Yeah. If that's what they want to do and they don't have any greater aspirations, then maybe they're good where they're at.
That's right.
I can talk till I'm blue in the face that you treating patients all day is a detriment to your business, your life, your personal life, and for the profession. Honestly, I can say that in all three phases, it can be detrimental. But if they don't truly believe it, then I can't help them. If they're wanting more though, that's where you and I know we can help, right?
That's right.
If they're wanting more than that, if they're like, I want more freedom, okay, or I'm doing all of this and I'm making a 2% profit margin, or I'm negative, right? Well, what do I do now? Well, I can help that guy. For someone who just wants to treat all day, like Will and I, interestingly, I look back at this and smile. We had this idea that we're going to get this consulting going. We're going to step out of our business, work on it so that things become more systematized and profitable, you name it. And then we're going to go back in and treat as much as we want.
Sorry. That never happened, Okay. Good. Cause
it might happen to some people. And a lot of therapists, because they have good hearts, were like me. I laugh at myself. I'm not going to laugh at other people, but I laugh at myself now because I did go back into treating a little bit, and the documentation and the regulations after about 3 months were just like, never again do I want to see another patient. I loved treating patients. I loved interacting with them. I got results. I'm a fairly good therapist, but I did not want to touch another patient for the rest of my life. So, and I had gotten to that point over time. So more power to them. If that's what they want to do, well, let's do that. But it takes a lot of effort to get to that point where you could come back and treat and be an integral part of the clinic. Well, hopefully you're not an integral part, but you can go back and treat patients if you want to, cash base and whatever on your own schedule.
Or cover a vacation or something like that.
Cover a vacation, whatever you want to do. But most people don't want to do that when they get to that level.
Well, you start to taste the freedom you hope the business ownership will give you someday, right?
Well, and you start to see opportunities that weren't there before. And well, if I'm treating patients, then that's a distraction to this opportunity. And so I love what you were talking about, time management. We're not good as time managers because our schedule is usually dictated to us.
Right.
And so we have to learn how to manage our time better. Yeah. And that can be a significant hurdle to get over when you're coming out of patient care and into more administrative work.
Yeah. And I think too, when you having admin time and you don't put it on a to-do list or something where you're like, what am I going to do during that 3 hour, half a day admin time? Your staff members will do it for you. They'll notice that you've got an opening in your schedule. You're not treating patients and they line up at your door. Hey, Nathan, you got a second? You got a second? You know, kind of thing. So you have to have whatever you're doing during your admin time as important as treating Bob Smith's back condition, you know?
I've always recognized that if you're going to have a half day of admin time, it should be after lunch. right? So treat patients, have a break, and then do it after lunch. I'm more and more trying to push people to just taking full days off because you and I know that going from treating mode to admin mode, it's like, I don't know what it is mentally that takes a shift, and it's really draining to make that shift, because I can go from treatment mode, treat all day. And then if you sit me in the desk, I have no idea where to start and what to do. And so you either need that break or just have a whole day dedicated to admin work, because the mindset shift can be draining and difficult and make you less productive. But I love what you alluded to, or at least said, was putting your to-do list on the calendar ahead of time. So you're not sitting there thinking, well, what do I do next? Oh, there's some bills to pay. I'll write some checks.
That's right.
Now what do I do next? Oh, that's right. I've got to finish that re-eval so it can get billed out. Okay. Yeah. Oh, let's check email. No, if you can put your to-do list on the calendar and block out the times of things that need to get done, that can make you most effective.
Yeah, I always think of in terms of like a primary target, that what we used to always do with clients, and you probably could remember this, and we'd tell people, you have to start with getting a 5-hour block on your schedule during the normal work week. You remember those times? And so, but but sometimes getting the client to, like, you mean like, how about an hour a day? It's like, no, hour a day bleeds right through, and at least a 5-hour block to start. And so whenever I'd have a consultant that was having troubles with the client, not applying, not winning, something's not working, I'll say, does he have a 5-hour block? And they go, I don't know, go find out. And he doesn't have a 5-hour block. So you don't concentrate his attention on creating a future, because he takes little periods and he doesn't hold it steady, hold it fast, that during this time, I'm working on my future plans and programs. I'm building a better mousetrap. Right. All my other times, I could be, with the fire hose, putting out the fire. But during this time, I'm creating future. And and then eventually, as you know, then it's all day. And then it's 2 days. Then it's all the time, right? Just finding the time, forcing the time. It'll be challenging, yeah. When you look at the client and what the client has attention on now, not just him or her taking some time to be a better executive. When you take that owner and he faces the rest of his staff, what's his biggest challenge and trouble that he has with his staff members?
What I feel like I'm talking about, or training a lot on, is how to hold people accountable. Yeah. And maybe I'm jumping in. I'm trying to think of something a little bit of broader scope, but it's to lead a team. Like, no one is naturally born to lead the team. We didn't get any training like that in physical therapy school, right? And then sometimes we expect the same of our management teams. If we have someone who we're building up as a clinic director, and say it's a front office coordinator that's over the other patient care coordinators, and all their stats aren't any good. And I had this conversation with someone yesterday, and I'm like, well, what are you doing with the coordinator? She should be the one helping the rest of the team get the stats up. And number one, he wasn't having any meetings with the coordinator. Number two, I don't think they had any stats that they were assessing and reviewing on a regular basis. And he kept saying, well, I want you to watch these videos. I want you to watch 5 videos a week, which totaled probably an hour. On front office trainings, and they weren't doing it. Right. And so he's expecting someone else to hold them accountable when he's not holding her accountable. And no one's ever been trained on how to hold people accountable. And so we had to go back to, okay. Number one, you have to set the expectation and then establish an agreement with the person you're working with. All right. This is the expectation, and here's the agreement. Can we do that? And then have an understanding that in the near future, maybe in a week at the same time, same place, we're going to talk about what you did towards meeting that expectation and upholding our agreement. And if it didn't get met, then how do you address that? And so that was something that I still have a hard time. I wouldn't say I have a hard time doing it. It's still a learning process to deal with people. But it's easy as a physical therapist. And what we trained on, like I said, for decades was to treat patients. You tell them what to do and hopefully they do it. But if they don't do it, it's no skin off your back. You're just going to try to push them to do their home exercise programs more often. But now you have an employee and it's a different story. You need to consider firing them and how you're going to hire the next person. And if they're not meeting it, and how do you encourage them? How do you train them? Those are all things that you need to learn over time, right? And so that's something that I'm finding needs to be addressed often with owners and being physical therapists, the personality is that we want to be liked. We're compassionate hearts. We want to be as empathetic. We want to lean towards empathy as much as possible without holding the line of accountability. Right. And so that can be really difficult.
Yeah, I agree. I think sometimes you see like the owner wants to change the behaviors of his staff without changing his own behaviors. Right. Totally. I want them to be more dedicated or more on top of things, but then they're not getting anything done. Right. So it does start with the individual mindset, changing his point of view, recognizing that he can handle things, and then part of it is just like, if you think of children, then you got this thing figured out, right? Because you tell your kids to go clean their room and then they say they did. And then you go in and then you have different definitions of what is a clean room, right? Mm-hmm. And then, then you have to reapply the policy to this is what a clean room looks like, and, then the staff goes, I did it. And then you go and look and it's a mess. And so what do? You clean their room for them. No, you don't do that. You get them to actually handle that problem. And so I think that with what you're saying, it's like, I find that it's just not making too many changes too fast when I work with somebody. And that I didn't learn 20 years ago. That I've learned more recently, and
I could learn more about that and to scale my expectations back as a coach.
Yeah.
Maybe have them work on one or two things at a time instead of 3 or 4, right?
Yeah, because then you're coaching for wins, right? They're winning, right? And it's a little step. So you never want to, I realized, after I left private equity and got back into this game, I realized that what I thought the client could do and what the client was willing to do were entirely two different things. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, well, why what was going on? Why didn't we get this done? And they'd say, well, and then they'd be overwhelmed or whatever. And, then I realized I was becoming the next problem that they were having because I was trying to push on something, even though we made agreements early on that they wanted me to push them. Right. Right. Yeah, but they didn't.
They said they did.
Yeah. It's like you want your wife to tell you if you're eating something you shouldn't eat until she tells you. And then you go, you don't have to tell me every time I eat that.
Why are you being
why are you always on my case? Right? So I started noticing that we're making smaller changes where the client feels somewhat underwhelmed by you, not overwhelmed at first. And then they do it, and then little by little, like you notice the morale goes up in the group versus cracking the whip, right? Yeah. The morale goes up in the group and the owner feels like people are admiring him or her as being a leader. And then you take a bigger bite and a bigger bite. And then next thing you're opening another clinic. And so, but that's just been a relatively new thing because, I've been doing this thing for a long time, right? And
you've been doing it so long.
I've been in it so long, it's exhausting. Yeah. But the part that's igniting a lot of interest that I see is that, recognizing for me on that there's so many more stresses in private practice today than there ever were even when you were practicing, let alone when I was practicing. Right. You had to be a mental furball to fail in private practice when I was in private practice, right? So it's becoming, you have to be a better business owner, a better leader today more than any other time. So I definitely 100% agree, but taking little steps sometimes makes a big difference,
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. I think some of the successful PT owners out there navigating through the current environment are some of the better small business owners in the country, I believe.
Oh yeah, they're
compared to other industries. Like you don't have to navigate what we have to navigate and be successful in the construction industry. Take your pick.
Oh, right.
Real estate. That's why I like real estate. It's for dummies. You can make money in those things without having to deal with all the regulations, HR headaches, ins and outs, billings, collections, you name it. All this stuff you don't have to deal with. So for physical therapy owners to be successful in this environment takes a lot of skill and ability. And to think that you can do that coming right out of school or even having practiced for a few years and think you're a great therapist is naive. Being a good therapist has nothing to do with being a good business owner, which is what you could become when you finally hang your shingle. And so I think it requires, my mantra is get out, reach out, and network. You got to get out of the practice. You've got to reach out and find someone to help you and guide you and give you some expertise and network with other owners, because many times you're going to feel alone and that you're reinventing the wheel. If you just connect with some people, they're willing to share what they've done successfully to help you overcome the issues that you have. But you have to do those three things to really be successful.
Sure. I have been in over 300 plus clinics, and sometimes I'll go be overwhelmed by all the bad things I see. And then sometimes I see some things that really change the way I work with people. Right. Mm-hmm. You and I both know Aaron Williams, and went out to do an office visit with him, and he had a quarterly staff meeting, and he gave $23 gas cards to every staff member who got a patient to refer a friend or family member. And somehow he was able to track it to the individual staff members.
Right.
And because it's 23 because his favorite player of all time was Michael Jordan. And so they got $23 gas cards. And my wife and I are there for a quarterly conference. I think we were doing a visit with you and Will. We just had a little window in between. And so we actually, he called everybody up on stage, and I don't know, he probably had 80 staff, and 15 of them were still sitting in the seats and everyone else is on the stage. And I was one of those 15 people. I'd be very nervous, but,
right.
But one lady hands 2 stacks of cards, and she fans them out. And he says, Maria, when was the last time you bought gas? And she says, I haven't bought gas in the 3 years that I've been here, Mr. Aaron. Right. Yeah. And it hit me oh my God, I've always known that it's a gold mine inside your practice that people don't tap. And ever since that time I saw that, that's been a kind of a mission for me of we do such a great job. Our patients love us. They talk about us during dinner. They come back a year later, they pick up a sentence where they left off, and it's take care, come back if you need us. And it's we just don't do anything to get a megaphone in their hands. And right. If you're able to do that, just 5% better than we're doing today, right. It would make a big difference in a practice.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fun to learn some of those things that you get from clients, and then you get excited about sharing them with other clients. It's part of what you do is hey, this is successful over here. You need to consider that in your place as well. It's fun to share those kind of things.
Especially even when clients get a CEO, you guys got a CEO, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's when you finally get a CEO to step into the role, who would have thought that you would ever get to that point that something like that can happen? But, the most powerful thing that holds us back in life is a thought anyway. So, it's not any other thing, a thought right. that we feel we can overcome. Right.
Right.
Nathan, I appreciate you being on this particular podcast. I know we're just kind of going back and forth. Just so you know, I was you're one of my first interviews. You are my first interview.
Hey.
I love what you're doing. I love how you're helping this profession that desperately needs it.
Well, thank you.
And you do make a difference. The places that I run into, I mention your name. Oh, he's the podcast guy. I like him. Right. So
and it goes right back at you, Shaun. There are, at this point, I'm not surprised, but I have been surprised over the past 4 years of the people that I interview who you've affected over the years with your work. And these are people that I would have never considered you had any connection to them at all. But then now they're successful business owners because of the work that you've done. So right back at you, man.
Thanks. I appreciate that. We'll do this again sometime.
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah, anytime.
All right. Thanks.